It's Tuesday, hopefully, by the time you're watching this, and not Wednesday, but that means it's time for another Top 10 Tuesday. Given the state of the world and the fact that a whole bunch of people are now having to be forcibly shut into their homes or with their families and looking for things to do, there's never a better time to get into Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought for this Top 10 Tuesday, I'd share with you my top 10 tips for Dungeon Masters. This is things that will apply to new DMs as well as veteran DMs, but it's my personal top 10 list, and it's all based on experience, and ideally with examples of each and why it's good to do these and bad not to. If you're curious what those are, stay tuned. Number 10. So let's get started. Number 10 is keep playing and keep trying until you find your style. This is actually one suggested by one of my friends and player and fellow DMs, Jake, who you've seen on the channel in the past through gameplay things. And it's a good point. No two DMs are alike. No two DMs' storytelling style, their narrative, how they go about the game, and the types of games they run are the same. And that's for a reason, right? Everybody in the world is different. The way they approach things are different. So don't try to shoehorn yourself into what you think a dungeon master should be. You may watch a lot of really popular D&D streams and shows like Critical Role or Acquisitions Incorporated, or you may listen to D&D podcasts, right, like Dungeon Drunks or Venture Maidens or whatever. And those folks, all excellent people, all great DMs. But don't feel like you need to be Matt Mercer or you need to be Celeste Conowitch. You don't have to be. You are you. Find what works for you and develop your own DMing style. And honestly, you'll feel better about it if you're not trying to constantly compare yourself to someone else. And your players, ultimately, even if they don't know it, will appreciate it more because you will feel more comfortable in your own skin and comfortable in your ability to run the game. Oh, and I guess I said I would say I would give an example. So again, it's just a concept, right, where people will show up and you'll think, I've run games for a long time. I've had friends playing games with me and then run games for me. And people will say, man, like, I just, you do it this way. We are not sponsored by Schweppes. And, I couldn't do it like that. And it's like, I don't want you to run the games the way I run the games. I want you to run the game that you want to run. I just want to sit here and enjoy it and have fun. You don't have to be me. You don't need to be somebody else. Run the game you want to run. And if I'm enjoying it, I'm going to hang around. And that's just how it's going to be. Number 9. Number 9 is prepare as much as makes you comfortable. There's like my last point, there is no proper way and standard way to prepare for any game when you're running it. So you can look it up, and I'm sure if you look at like top 10 DM tips or how to prep for a DM session, and you don't look at a website where somebody posts their one opinion, but you look at, say, a forum or a message board or a Discord channel where people ask, how much do you guys prepare for a session every week? Now, some people will tell you, I'll prepare 2 hours for every 1 hour of game time, right? Other people will tell you 1-to-1. If you're going to play for 3 hours, prep for 3 hours. That's great. That works for them. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe for you to feel comfortable for your game, you need to have 6 different battle maps drawn out. You need to have a bolded list of NPCs and treasures and items and all these kinds of things all planned out. And you need to have it all pre-scripted and a notebook full of things, and that's what makes you feel comfortable. If that's going to make you comfortable in the DM chair, then that's what you need to do. People, and it's a thing that players can notice, and even if they're really nice and don't tell you, I know I've felt it myself. When your DM isn't comfortable and doesn't feel comfortable, it kind of starts to bleed into the game. Maybe not always, but you can kind of see when people are scrambling, and that's okay, right? Thinking on your feet is part of being a DM. But, if you have a big plot moment coming up in the story and you don't feel comfortable before the session, we got to prepare for it. So for me personally, my DM style is very fast and loose. I've played with my players for a long time, And I know personally that anytime I plan something out and come up with a big, extensive story, they will immediately derail it completely. And that effort is more or less wasted. We may come back to it later. So when I sit down to play a session with my typical Tuesday group, I have maybe a list of 6 to 7 bullet points, and that's it. Right? I have a general knowledge of the world. It's a world that I built for myself, and I know more or less where the characters are going and what I want the campaign to do. So I'll give myself a couple bullets to say, these are this is, a little bit of what happened last time. These are topics I'd like to hit this session, and a couple interesting points. And then from there, I play the session, and I let them do what they want to do, because that's how my players like to go about it. I'll give them a couple of threads, and they go for it. But that involves very minimal preparation on my part. And honestly, I'm thankful for that, because everyone's strapped for time. But if you feel like you need to prep a full half an hour dedicated, where you just sit down and write for your session upcoming, and that makes you feel comfortable in the DM chair, then do what you need to do. If it's 6 hours, sure, whatever it is. No, like I said, no DM style is the same, so no amount of preparation for a given session is the same. Number 8. Number 8, don't be afraid to take a break. And this has multiple levels, right? Don't be afraid to take a break mid-session and say, like, time out, guys. You know what? Things really took a turn. You guys really derailed where I thought we were going to go, and I just need, like, 10, 15 minutes to just, like, sit down and think and brainstorm. Or they attacked a whole bunch of people that you weren't thinking they were going to attack, and you didn't have stats for those enemies because you didn't think they were going to be enemies. Hey guys, listen, I just need like 5-10 minutes. Why don't you guys just go chill, maybe play a video game, play a board game, play a card game, hang out, chat on your phone. I just need like 5-10 minutes to just sit down and brainstorm this, because I wasn't planning it, right? That's something. But don't be afraid to take a break because you're the DM and you're tired. And you're saying like, hey, you know what, guys, maybe not even a break. Maybe we'll just end the session here because I'm tired. I got a lot on my mind. Work is crazy. Home life is crazy. I don't think I can focus on the game enough right now. I need to take a break. Let's end it. Right? Or, guys, I'm starving. Can we take a break and get something to eat? Can we like order a pizza? And then like, I mean, maybe if you don't want to tell your players like, hey, I wasn't thinking of this, and you want to say like, hey, can we stop and get a pizza and use that time to prep? That's a thing too. But ultimately, the other side of it too, don't be afraid to take a break and walk away from the campaign. I know that that's probably seems a little like don't do that. It's almost blasphemous. But if that's going to help prevent you hitting DM burnout, if you're not enjoying the game at the moment, you enjoyed it a lot at the beginning, you're not enjoying it right now, well, maybe take a break and evaluate why those things changed. Talk to your players about that, and then see. Right? So in one of my homebrew campaigns, a game that I first real long-running streamed game that I started is the same group of people I play with on every Tuesday, and I ran a session that I absolutely loved, and everybody playing it loved it. It was a really fun time, great characters, great story, and it ended very abruptly with an unplanned TPK. And after that, I said, guys, I had really hoped that this campaign was going to go. They were like level 16. I thought we were going to go to 20. I thought we were going to tell the whole story, and I was very excited to tell that story. And it just ended by accident with a couple of like a somewhat random encounter that was kind of instigated by some of the PCs. What ended up happening, and I didn't plan for that. And it honestly, it kind of broke me a little bit. Realistic, I was not planning for that. And that story was so ingrained to those characters, it didn't make sense to roll up new characters and continue that story. So I just said, guys, I want to take a break. Can somebody else run a game? And like, I'll think of the next campaign and figure out what I want to do, but I need somebody else to like step in. So what ended up happening was a couple of my players ran a couple games. I basically took a year off of DMing and played in games and used that time to craft and build out the homebrew world and the campaign in the game we're playing in every Tuesday. I built that in the downtime that they gave me by just letting me show up to be a player. And I am forever thankful for that, because we've been playing this current game for almost 2 years since then in this current homebrew world that I've made. And now this world has continued to grow over time, and now I already have multiple campaigns in the future planned out in this, but I don't know if I would have had the wherewithal and the energy and the creativeness to do that did I not suggest taking a break and my players 100% accept my decision to do so. Number 7. So this next one, number 7, is, I guess it's probably more for the new DMs, but they don't know it wasn't by design unless you tell them, right? Fake it till you make it, that kind of a thing. If you had something planned and the player suggests something and you're like, oh man, that's really good, I'm going to go with that. And things end up working out, or something goes way off the rails and crazy and then it comes back in full circle and it looks and it sounds great. You don't have to feel uncomfortable that it didn't go the way you planned. They don't know that what's happening wasn't something you planned for unless you tell them, holy crap, I wasn't planning for that. So don't worry about it, right? If things go off the rails and they get a little funky, as long as you're able to think on your feet and have fun and it's fun for everybody involved, let them keep thinking that was something you designed. Because, I mean, you had to think of stuff on the fly to make it work, and you did, and everybody had a good time. So again, like I said, I feel like this is more for the new folks, the veteran guys who've been around, or gals who have been around for a while, the veteran folks who've played for a long time. You know that sometimes things just don't go the way you're expecting it, and you need to make something up on the fly and go with it. And that's fine. But for newer folks who feel like you need to have an answer for everything because you're running the show, you don't have to have an answer for everything, and they don't need to know that you don't. And just, as everybody's having fun and you're enjoying yourself, there's nothing to worry about. Number 6. Number 6, steal from others. There is not a whole lot of original ideas left in this world. A lot of people have thought of a lot of things, and I mean, the fact that Simpsons did it was an episode of South Park means that was a point, right? I mean, people have done these things before. So you may watch one of my sessions, let's say, and you really like a thing that I did, or a way I approached an NPC, or the way that I do world building. Or you may watch, Critical Role, and you're like, oh man, the way Matt does that Who Wants to Do This thing, I really like that. I want to add that to my game. Or you may watch, you may decide to start streaming, and you may watch, a Penny Arcade Acquisitions Incorporated stream and be like, man, I really like the way they have chat interaction. Steal that. Everybody out there is creating cool things for you to consume. And if you see or hear of something cool that someone does, and this happens to me all the time, I recently just came across a list of homebrew rules, the video I did on the 20 homebrew rules listed in Dragon Plus. A lot of those I'd never heard of, and I loved them. So I'm incorporating those into my games because I thought they were interesting. I think my players will find them interesting, and it's my game, and I think they'll be fun, so I'm going to bring them in. But by all means, if you hear me talking about something, and this is an open license, if you hear me say something on a channel, a concept for a campaign, in a new monster video, or a DM's advice video where I tell you something you could use in your game, or you watch some of the gameplay over on Nerd Immersion Plays and you really like what I do there, take it and use it for your own. It's free. I'm putting it out there on the internet. I'm not going to be upset if you come and tell me, hey, I really like the way you did that one encounter, so I stole it and incorporated it into my game. Because that's awesome. I consume a lot of D&D content as a dungeon master myself, whether that be podcasts, live streams, live play shows, because everything that I watch and consume is something else that helps fuel my process. And sometimes it's taking something and tweaking it to put it into my game, or sometimes it's a direct port. This encounter was awesome, I'm going to put it in my game. And there's no reason you can't do that yourself. If you're worried about, there's also two schools of that, I should say. You could go the way where you don't want your players, there's no reason for your players to really care if you're stealing or borrowing something from something else and putting that in your game. There's some people, I think they want to make it seem like they have all original ideas, and you could definitely do that and not tell them. Or you could. I know, for example, one of my friends, Sean's running a game for his girlfriend and their family, and he's basically been taking the storylines from Dragon Age Origins, like the branching story plots, because none of them have played Dragon Age Origins, so it's all original to them. And he's been taking all of the different choices you need to make of who you're going to help here and there, the branching paths, and that stuff he's putting into the game, and they all think it's amazing, right? If you know, but you could go the other way too with that, and if people, somebody really likes something, you could put that in the game as a means to help pull them in too, right? Like if your players love Star Wars, or your players love Ninja Turtles, or Castlevania, or whatever, there's no reason you couldn't take a cool episode, a cool plot line, something from that, and work that into an encounter in D&D. And maybe that leads to them finding the vampire killer whip from Castlevania. Maybe it leads to them finding a sunblade and it's purple and it looks like Mace Windu's lightsaber, right? Whatever it is, that can go both ways. You could steal it because you think it's fun and interesting and the players enjoy it, or you could steal something that works to the things that they like to make them enjoy it even more. Number 5. Number 5 seems like a no-brainer, but I feel like it's worth mentioning, and that's establish your rules up front. And what I mean by that is everybody has a different way of creating a character, right? That's obviously going to be something you figure out up front. So you could kind of argue that this is do a session 0. You don't necessarily have to, although I would recommend if you have the time and the opportunity to conduct a session 0, do so. But even if it's as simple as this about talking about the rules. Hey, in my game, you get to do two-handed weapon wielders using strength, get to add 1.5 times their strength modifier to the damage they do. You should know that up front when you're making your character. Hey, I think drinking potions is a bonus action. Hey, I don't use critical, I don't have a critical fumble table, but I don't have something great for critical hits either. It's just what it is in the book. Hey, in my game, we double the dice on a critical hit, or we do max die plus a die roll. In my game, you can critically succeed or critically fail on skill checks. Whatever the case may be, if you have a set of house rules or homebrew rules up front, let the players know early as possible, so that way they can think that in some people build their characters because they have a roleplay concept or a character concept, and they just build that because that's what they want, and that's what they do. Some characters like to do more min-maxy necessarily stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that, so they want to design their character to be the most effective it can be, so if you have rules that may alter that, let them know. Another thing to think about too, I would say probably establishing this up front isn't bad, is if you are, figure out how you're going to handle rules on the fly, right? It happens to every DM at some point. Someone calls into question a rule that you're not familiar with and they're not really familiar with, so figure out how that's going to go. Are you going to take 10 minutes flipping through your DMG or your player's handbook to find that one rule to make the ruling? I'd recommend against that because it's going to completely bring everything to a standstill. So how are we going to handle this? Hey, guys, so if a rule comes up or a question comes up to a rule and I don't know the answer or we're unsure and there's like you say it's this, I say it's this, I'm going to take 30 seconds. If I can't find the rule in 30 seconds, I'm going to make a ruling at that point in the game, and we're going to play with that rule for the rest of the session, and maybe we'll do some research after the game and change it, or if we like this new ruling better, we'll just use that going forward. That's a good thing to do rather than completely halting the gameplay while someone tries to find a rule. And that's especially true if you're creating content on the internet, like a live stream or a podcast. No one likes dead air time. So if I need to look up a new rule and it takes me 10 minutes, like if it's looking up a spell in the player's handbook and you know where it is, that's usually a relatively quick ruling, or it's in D&D Beyond, or it's in an app. But if it's something where I need to stop, pause what I'm doing, and then search through a document to find it, that maybe kills the mood a little bit and derails the whole, if everybody was immersed in the plot line, that kind of kills it. So come up with how you're going to rule on things going forward, and then also establish your rules of what is legal for the players to use. Are you player's handbook only? Are you any published source? Do you allow homebrew, DM's Guild, Unearthed Arcana, whatever it is? What about future books that come out, right? If a new book's coming out next month and I like the character options in that book, are you going to let me change it? Do I have to make a new character? How are we handling all that kind of stuff? Are there special death and resurrection rules in your game? Figure that out up front, lay it all out for the players so they know what they're getting into. Number 4. Number 4, have a list of names. Have a list of names and have them broken down by race, if that's important to you in your game, right? You might have Henry the dwarf, Henry the dragonborn, Bill the, the halfling, Bill the human, Bill the tiefling. I don't know. It's whatever you want it to be, but there is always 100% without fail a time where some player's going to say, "Hey man, what's your name?" Or, "Hey, I didn't quite catch your name there." And you as a DM are going to be like, "Shit." And then you start looking around the room and you're like, Schweppes. His name is Schweppes. Yep. Schweppes the Dwarven Barkeep. All right, well, that's his name now. And that's how things go. You start looking around the room and you're like, all right, well, what else do I got in here? Oh, the dragon's name is Polyhedrus. Yep. Polyhedrus the dragon, because I got some dice near me. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of things that I find happens all the time. I used to be even worse about this back in the day. So now I try to keep a list. And you know what? There are lists in like Volo's Guide to Monsters. In the back, there's a list of names. You can look up lists of names online and just keep them in the back of your DM notebook or whatever you've got and be like, okay, you run into this dwarf and his name is Jarek. And you cross Jarek off your name list. And now you've used that name, but this NPC is something. And to that point, take notes on the name, right? If you give an NPC a name, nothing is worse than the next week or 2 sessions down the line where the player's like, "What was his name?" And you're like, "I have no idea what his name was." And then you try to make it up on the fly and then it changes it. And everybody's looking through their notes. So have a list of names to use, but when you use them, make note of who it is. Number 3. Number 3 is pacing. Boy, did I used to be the worst at this. So when I mean pacing is I mean figure out what makes sense, but also don't be afraid to speed things up and don't be afraid to take your time. So there are certain things, and I'm sure we've all seen it either in a game we've run or a game we've played or whatever it is, where there's a section of travel, right? The party needs to get from point A, where they're at currently, and the rest of the campaign and the mission starts at point B. And it's going to take them 21 days to get there. Then comes the question, how do we handle random encounters? How do we handle travel? Do I put an encounter every day? 21 encounters. This could take forever. This could take you weeks of actual playtime to complete 21 encounters that aren't even important in the game because the real adventure starts at point B. But you feel like you need to fill the 21 days with experiences and adventures and encounters to make it seem like time passed. And I feel like the 100% worst example of this is Horde of the Dragon Queen and the whole damn caravan section in the middle of it, where it's like a 2-month trip, but it takes forever because there's so much shit that they lay out for you to do. So think about that. Do I need to make this encounter feel grueling like it lasts forever and it only takes 21 days? Or do I maybe say there's 2 planned encounters, one's on day 7, one's on day 16, and I say, hey, you guys travel for the first 7 days, nothing really crazy happens. Is there anything I should know that you guys are doing during that first 7 days? They tell you yes, they tell you blah, 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 character development, great. Day 7, start of the day, roll a d20, right? So that's one way to do it. You could do random encounter tables where somebody rolls, and if they roll X number or higher or lower, then an encounter happens. And that's fun, but that also has the potential to do random encounters like that you hit a new encounter every day. Not very likely that it will happen, but it could. And that's a lot of the way the pre-written campaigns are written, where do a random encounter. If you roll a 16 or above on a d20, a random encounter happens. There's potentials, and I've done it where they don't encounter anything, and I just slowed down the game to have my players roll a bunch of d20s for no reason. So what I prefer in that particular example, every game is different, you do what's right for you, that set up a couple of encounters that you plan out when they're going to happen, And maybe you have the players roll a couple dice here and there to throw them off so they don't know when things are going to happen, and then the encounters happen as planned. On the other side, if something is really cool that you want to get the players to, because this is one of the things I'm really bad about. Like, oh my god, next session, when they beat these bad guys, this really awesome thing is going to happen. And you want that to happen, so you speed up the combat, you speed up things because you want to get them there, but then it just feels rushed, and like all the stuff in between there, was it like pointless? It didn't make any sense? Take your time. The game will unfold as it should. Feel free to pump the brakes and be like, you know what? I don't need to rush them into this. I don't want to speed through this dungeon and just throw a bunch of stuff at them. Because I do this, like this really cool magic item I designed is something I had planned to put at the end of the dungeon. But I really want to have it now, so they find it now. And it's like, well, there probably would have been more payoff if they'd found it later on in the dungeon after a random encounter or a massive boss fight than like in the corner of a room that's empty, right? So think about the pacing. Do what makes sense. Don't feel like you have to pack everything into one session. It can take multiple times. A combat doesn't necessarily need to end in this session. It could stop and then bridge into the next one. There's a good thing to be said for speeding up travel, for slowing down travel. Pacing is important, and find what works for the game, and specifically where you are in the campaign. Number two, only use dice when necessary. I cannot stress this enough. Dice are there for when things are uncertain. That's what a die roll represents. When there's a degree of uncertainty, a degree of chance that something may not happen, right? If your character is a carpenter and all they do is build houses every day, do not make the character roll to hammer a nail into a piece of wood. It's a thing they can do. There's also no downside, like there's no point in that to make them roll for that. Best example I can give you is I played in a game, and I shit you not, this is real, where a DM made the wizard roll a perception check to find their own spellbook in their own backpack. And it was not because it was stolen. They rolled like a 3, and the DM agreed that the wizard could not find their spellbook in their own backpack. Just couldn't find it. Then, like, 30 minutes later in game, he went to look for his spellbook again. She made him roll another perception check. He rolled a 16, and then he found it. It wasn't like roll a perception check to see if you hit it, to see if you see the person stealing it from you. No, he was in his own backpack, and because he rolled so low, the wizard, whose a spellbook is an integral part of their character, could not find their spellbook in their own backpack unless they rolled a 10 or whatever DC she set to find your own spellbook. That is so stupid. It made no sense. You could just see the look on the player's face that he basically checked out, and he was like, I'm done. He was fed up with the game. He didn't want to play it anymore. That just ruined his experience because it was something that there was no roll required for that. He didn't suffer any impediment or things that would cause him to not be able to see things. She just had people roll for literally everything. Like, every tiny little thing. Tying your shoes, roll a dexterity check. Like, it was like that. And that is not fun. So, only roll dice when there's a degree of uncertainty, right? There are reasons, and there are plenty of things that can happen in game where you can be like, you don't need to roll for that. You just do it. It's fine, right? I'm a blacksmith, and I want to make a simple longsword. I've been working in smithing my entire life. I've made thousands of swords. I just want to make a sword. It's not a fancy sword. It's not a magic sword. I just want to make another longsword. Sure, you do. No roll necessary. You've done this all your life. It makes perfect sense that you can do this. No big deal. Hey, I'm a ranger. I'm in the woods. I've got snacks. I've got foods. I want to call that squirrel over to me. The woods are not ravaged by crazy creatures. I have things to coax the thing over. I make an animal handling check. You're a ranger, you're in the woods, you're doing your thing. Sure, you do it. What benefit was there for me to make you roll, and then potentially fail if nothing happens from that? Also, another thing, if you want the players to succeed at something, do not have them roll. This is another thing that I've seen. Hey, I want to do X. Okay, make a acrobatics check. 5. Well, that's good enough. What was the point? If the DC for that acrobatics check was a 5 or below, and the minimum they could roll is a 4, what was the point of having that 1% chance of uncertainty? Like, was there a reason for that? And I'll be honest, I've done this myself, where I'll have someone make a check, and I'm assuming that they're gonna make it because the DC's only 10, and then they fail, and then they roll like an 8, and you're like, well, that's good enough. And then I think to myself, well, that was stupid, Ted. You set the DC at 10, they rolled an 8, you wanted them to do it, so you said it was fine. You probably shouldn't have just had them roll at all, because you just wanted them to be able to do it. If it's something where there's a chance that they could fail and it's a meaningful reason that they could, right? The barbarian wants to break open the iron-banded, double-locked door. This is not an easy thing to do. Please roll to see if you can do it. The barbarian wants to knock off the door made out of sticks thrashed together with twine on the house made out of straw. What's the check going to be for that? 5? Why even bother? Just let him do it. So that's my point for this one. Only use dice when you need to, right? There's plenty of meaningful things. And honestly, I bet you if you do a certain thing and your player's like, can I do this? And you're like, sure, you do it. You'll see a smile on their face, and they'll appreciate it that much more, that you recognized something about their backstory or their character, that they're really good at a particular thing, that they don't need to roll to do it. They just do it. And I feel like even when DMs tell me the same thing, like, oh, sure, you could do it. You're a wizard. You've studied the arcane arts. Sure, absolutely, you can do that. No roll necessary. And that, it just feels good. I don't know. I can't explain it. If you've experienced it, I'm sure. But you know what I'm talking about. Number 1. Lastly, number 1 is as simple as it sounds, and probably shouldn't have to say it, but talk to your players. I know that sounds dumb, but honestly, I mean that. And I don't just mean before the game, before the campaign starts, I mean throughout it. And when I say talk to your players, I mean up front. Talk to your players and figure out what they like. And let them know, I'm going to be running this kind of campaign. My campaign is a social intrigue campaign, more like Game of Thrones. The main focus of the campaign, at least in the early seasons and early books, is political and social intrigue, getting role-playing, that kind of a thing. Combat is there, but it's not the primary source of what's going to be happening in the game. Or, I love D&D combat. It's going to be all fighting pretty much all the time, minimal role-playing. I like an immersive story where I like to tell and flourish, and combat will take a while because I like to explain the different statuses of the enemies and the way your attacks roll. Or, I'm going to say, all right, it rolls a natural 20. It does 16 points of damage to you, and we move on. Or am I going to say, it swings, finding a weak spot in your armor, and a gout of blood sprays out, and you take 16 points of damage? Am I going to be more like that, or am I more focused on, I want combat, and I just want combat to go and happen, but I want it to roll through, so I just roll, tell you I hit, tell you the damage, and we move on? Is it going to be a game where, we're at a mix? A little bit of combat, a little bit of social killing. You don't care about your character backstories, or I don't care about your character backstories. It's there, and maybe it'll come up, but I've got the story I want to tell, and I want to tell it. Again, not saying that's right or wrong, but have this discussion with people up front. Learn what your character's like. Do they have this 16-page backstory that they love to have it pay off, and you come up with ways to work that into the story? Ideally, again, talking to your players beforehand could be something like a session 0, where everybody sits down, they build their characters out together, they figure out how their characters fit into the world, how they may or may not know each other, and that's all established in a setting where everybody gets to know each other. Are you playing with new players who've never played D&D before? Talk to them about how your experience is going to be. If some people only know it from watching a show like Critical Role or something else, tell them, how it's going to interact and how it's going to be in comparison to that game, right? If that's all they expect, tell them, well, I'm not Matt Mercer. This is how I run my games, and it'll be like this. And again, talking to people up front and laying this stuff out on the line is good, because realistically, some people, when you have that conversation, they may say, awesome, I'm 100% in. Or some people be like, you know what? That sounds good, but I don't really think that's games for me, so I think I'm going to pass. And that is okay. Like, that's perfectly fine. Better to have that discussion up front and let people know what they're getting into, and then have them choose to walk away if they want to, rather than having to have them get into a game. And sometimes, and I'll be honest, sometimes players join a campaign and they feel, in some cases, obligated to keep playing because they made the commitment to you that they're going to be your player, and they may not be enjoying the experience, and just out of pure obligation, they keep playing. And like, they're not enjoying it. And if they're not enjoying it, why are they playing? But you know what I mean? So that's also something to discuss with your players throughout the campaign. You talk to your players. Hey guys, how did that session go? What did you think? I tried a new mechanic. I tried a new enemy. I tried a new thing with this role playing. I tried doing voices. Did you like me doing voices for NPCs? Did you not like me doing voices for NPCs? What are your thoughts? Things to figure out and grow the campaign. If this is, in an ideal world, your campaign's going to keep going, and you want to make sure everybody's having a good time. So, at some points, I do this too. I'll reach out to my players and be like, hey, is everything good? I just want to check if anybody wants to bow out of the campaign. I have, no hard feelings. I just want to double check and check in and make sure everybody's still interested. They still like where it's going. And I often say that too, especially because I do stuff here online. Like, don't feel obligated that you need to play. If you don't feel like you want to play and you want to bow out, let's talk about it. How are we going to write your character out of the game? Can we get one final session with them? What's the thoughts, right? Figure that all out. And that's good. Those are conversations that I've had with people, and sometimes it's like, no, I'm just really stuck, work is really crazy, so I can't. Or sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm thinking I want to leave, and we transition the character out, and maybe we bring in somebody new, or we just play without them. But I also like to see, like, hey, your character, we had a really, like a really intense roleplay session that game. Are you okay with that? What are your thoughts on it? Where do you want your character to end up? Do you want to have, hey, you only gave me very minimal stuff on your character's backstory. Are you interested at all in more character development, or you just kind of want to do what you're doing? Sometimes that's like, no, man, I'm good. I like where I'm at. I just want to keep playing the game, and that's it. And that's cool. Sometimes people are like, yeah, I actually do want to have more character development. I would love to expand and build on this character. Here's a couple thoughts I had. What do you think? And you guys build a great dialogue, and then that character kind of grows and grows and grows and becomes an even more immersive part of the world, and everybody gets to, enjoy that character exploring their story. But none of that can happen unless you have the conversations with your players. I guess I should say some of this can happen organically over time. But try to engage your players, and players too, if you're watching this, engage with your DM. They'll never know that you really want to have this cool magic item if you don't tell them that that's something you'd ultimately like to have for your character. Or they won't know that you necessarily feel uncomfortable or don't enjoy a specific thing in a game if you don't tell them, right? Like, there's no way for them to know. So I've encountered this before, where a player had a character that had a whole bunch of secrets that they made up, but they kept those secrets from me, the DM, so I could never help make that stuff happen. And they were upset that their secrets that they never told me came into the campaign and came into play. And I said, how can I help you if you're keeping the secrets from me? We need to work together to build this up. If you want this NPC that's your character's sister to show up to help, I need to know that your character has a sister so I can make that happen. I don't want to take control over your character's story by making up, cousins, allies, secret evil twins, any of that kind of stuff. I don't want to do that, because I don't want to take the option for that away unless you tell me that's what you want. If you tell me, hey, my character's kind of a blank slate, here's a couple ideas, but I'm going to relinquish creative control of what happens with the character's family and any of that stuff to you as the DM, run with it as you see fit. Well, if you're going to give me that opportunity, you need to let me have that opportunity to do so. If I'm going to make up an evil twin, you need to yes and me, and we go from there. But if you're keeping secrets from me, the DM, I can't make those secrets pay off unless I know about them. And I've had that happen. I have some players in long-running campaigns where we would have dialogue almost every day about what they want for their character, where they think they're going, changes their character is going to undergo, finding religion, finding family, losing family, all that kind of stuff. But we had that, and we still, we had general high-level conversations about what we wanted, and we played it out, and it was awesome. It was an amazing role-play scene. The rest of the party didn't know about it, but the player and I did, so we worked that out. So anyway, sorry that got a little ranty and kind of emotional at points, but it's obviously Dungeons and Dragons, as you all know, is something I'm very passionate about. So I wanted to make sure I gave you DM tips from the heart, and I tried to also not do things that like everybody tells you, and like every top 10, top 20, whatever reasons tips for new dungeon masters or tip for dungeon masters, like read the books, but you don't need to know all the rules. Like everybody tells you that. So I tried to go a little bit different from that and give you things that I've personally learned in my time as a DM and what really I think makes the most important impact to me. So hopefully you found this useful or at least entertaining amidst all the craziness that's going on in the world. That's why I've been trying to put out as many videos as I can, as frequently as I can during this time period. Even though work is an absolute nightmare for me right now, I'm trying to do this to help keep you guys distracted and give you something to look forward to, new uploads, things to keep you, take you out of the space that the world is in right now and maybe live in a fun fantasy world for a little while. So I hope you enjoy this. I do still have a giveaway going on for Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. The Jetpack 7 20K subscribers giveaway has ended. I will be announcing, or possibly by the time you're seeing this, I've already reached out to the winners. So check your email and respond if you want to win, because I often get people don't respond, and then I have to draw new winners. So anyway, that's going on. A couple of people have been asking recently what's the best way to reach out to me or get information on, like, vet out my homebrew stuff. We have a Discord at Nerd Immersion. There's a link in the description. If you join that, we have a massive community that continues to grow with passionate D&D players, DMs, content creators, people that will help you work through stuff. If you've got questions, you want opinions on DMing help, or, hey, can you guys check out my homebrew and let me know what you think? We got tons of people out there, coming up with comments, and the Discord's more active than it's ever been. So it may be of interest for you to check that out. And again, if you want to escape for a couple hours twice a week, Tuesday and Wednesday nights, Eastern Time, I do streams on my Twitch channel. There's a link down below for that as well. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. I'm a big boy. I can take a thumbs down. Doesn't bother me. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel and rang that notification bell because you want to stay up to date, because I'm putting out new videos every day, sometimes multiple times a day, that'd be a great time to do so. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next week with another top 10. And that was my outro. Bye.